A stew is a combination of solid food ingredients that have been cooked in liquid and served in the resultant gravy. Ingredients in a stew can include any combination of vegetables, meat, especially tougher meats suitable for slow cooking, such as beef, poultry, sausages, and seafood are also used. While water can be used as the stew cooking liquid, wine, stock, and beer are also common. Seasoning and flavorings may also be added. Stews are typically cooked at a relatively low temperature, allowing flavors to mingle. Stewing is suitable for the least tender cuts of meat that become tender and juicy with the slow moist heat method. This makes it popular in low-cost cooking. Cuts having a certain amount of marbling and gelatinous connective tissue give moist, juicy stews, while lean meat may easily become dry. Stews may be thickened by reduction or with flour, either by coating pieces of meat with flour before searing, or by using a roux, a berman, or a dough consisting of equal parts of fat and flour. Thickeners like cornstarch or arrowroot may also be used. Stews are similar to soups, and in some cases there may not be a clear distinction between the two. Generally, stews have less liquid than soups, are much thicker and require longer cooking over low heat, while soups are almost always served in a bowl. Stews may be thick enough to be served on a plate with the gravy as a sauce over the solid ingredients. History. Stews have been made since ancient times. Herodotus says that the Scythians put the flesh into an animal's paunch, mix water with it, and boil it like that over the bone fire. The bones burn very well, and a paunch easily contains all the meat once it has been stripped off. In this way an ox, or any other sacrificial beast, is ingeniously made to boil itself. Amazonian tribes used the shells of turtles as vessels, boiling the entrails of the turtle and various other ingredients in them. Other cultures used the shells of large mollusks to boil foods in. There is archaeological evidence of these practices going back 8,000 years or more. There are recipes for lamb stews and fish stews in the Roman cookery book Apicius, believed to date from the 4th century AD. La Viardia, one of the oldest cookbooks in French, written in the early 14th century by the French chef known as Tyvant, has ragouts or stews of various types in it. The first written reference to Irish stew is in Byron's The Devil's Drive, the devil dined on a rebel, so in an Irish stew. Types. In meat-based stews, white stews, also known as blanquettes or fricassees, are made with lamb or veal that is blanched, or lightly seared without browning, and cooked in stock. Brown stews are made with pieces of red meat that are first seared or browned before browned mirepoix, and sometimes browned flour. Stock and wine are added. List of stews. Bake-off, a potato stew from Alsace. Beef bourguignon, a French dish of beef stewed in red Burgundy wine. Beef stroganoff, a stew with beef from Russia. Bigos, a traditional stew in Polish cuisine. Birria, a goat stew from Mexico. Bocadillo, a beef stew in rich seasonings, served with bread. Noodle, a plain rice from Vietnam. Bollito misto, consisting of beef, veal, and pork simmered in an aromatic vegetable broth from Italy. Bouillard, an American meat stew. Bouillabaisse, a fish stew from Provence. Brunswick stew, from Virginia and the Carolinas. Burgoo, a Kentuckian stew. Caldeirada, a fish stew from Portugal. Carbonade flamande, a traditional Belgian beef and onion stew made with Belgian beer. Cassoulet, a French bean stew. Caul, a Welsh stew. Chakapuli, a Georgian stew made with lamb chops, coriander and tarragon leaves and white wine. Chanaki, a Georgian lamb stew with tomatoes, aubergines, potatoes, greens and garlic. Chakikan, a Chilean dish. Chankanabe, a Japanese dish flavored with soy sauce or miso. Chankanabe is traditionally eaten by sumo wrestlers. Chicken stew, whole chicken and seasonings.
chicken paprikash, chicken stew with paprika, chili con carne, Mexican-American meat and chili pepper stew. Chili sin carne, a meatless American adaptation of the Mexican dish. Chilorio, a pork stew from Sinaloa, Mexico. Cincinnati chili, chili developed by Greek immigrants in the Cincinnati area. Cholent, a slow-cooked Jewish dish eaten on the Shabbat. Shorba, a stew-like soup dish found in various Middle Eastern, Central Asian, South Asian and European cuisines. Cochinita pibil, an orange-color pork stew from Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. Cocido montanés, a Highlander stew, a bean and pork meat stew from Cantabria, Spain. Cotriade, a fish stew from Brittany. Cozido, a traditional Portuguese stew in Spain. It is called cocido. Cream stew, a yoshoku Japanese white stew. Crow stew, a sour cream-based stew made with crow meat, popular in the United States during the Great Depression. Dal, the Indian legume stew that has many varieties, a staple food throughout Asia. Daube, a French stew made with cubed beef braised in wine, vegetables, garlic and herbs. Dinuguan, pork blood stew from the Philippines. Udu, vegetable stew from Nigeria. Eintopf, a German stew that includes a vast number of unlimited ingredients. Fabada Asturiana, an Asturian bean and meat stew. Feijoada, Brazilian or Portuguese bean stew. Farical, traditional Norwegian stew with lamb or mutton and white cabbage. Fosarek, a thick Hungarian vegetable dish. Gaisberger Marsch, a German dish of stewed beef served with spätzle and potatoes. Gaima, an Iranian stew with cubed lamb and yellow split peas. Gorma sabzi, an Iranian stew with green herbs, dried limes, beans and sheep meat. Goulash, a Hungarian meat stew with paprika. Gumbo, a Louisiana Creole dish. Hashi, a Dutch type of stew with wine or vinegar. Halim, a Pakistani lentil and beef stew. Hassin Pfeffer, a sour, marinated rabbit stew from Germany. Hayashi rice, a Japanese dish of beef, onions and mushrooms in red wine and demi-glazed sauce, served with rice. Irish stew, made with lamb or mutton, potato, onion and parsley. Ishto, a curry in Kerala, India made from chicken or mutton, potato and coconut milk. Istrian stew, a jota, or jota, a dish popular in Croatian and Slovenian Istria in Italy. Ital stew, a Rastafarian vegan dish of mostly Caribbean root vegetables and spices. Jjigae, a diverse range of Korean stews. Kalips, a traditional Swedish beef stew with onions and carrots, served with potatoes and pickled beets. Kar, stewed beef or oxtail and vegetables in peanut sauce from the Philippines. Karelian hot pot, from the region of Karelia in eastern Finland. Kash, a traditional Armenian dish of pigs or cow's feet. Koresht, a variety of Persian stews, are often prepared with saffron. Kokaisto, a Greek stew with red meat in a tomato pasta with shallots, cinnamon and other spices. Lancashire hot pot, an English stew. Lexo, a summertime favorite in Hungary, vegetable stew with paprika and tomato as main ingredients. Lokra, a South American stew. Mashanka, a Belarus and Ukraine pork stew. Mekado, a Philippine beef stew. Moqueca, a Brazilian stew with fish is its main ingredient. Nihari, a Pakistani beef stew made overnight and served for breakfast. Nikujaga, a Japanese beef and potato stew. Olla podrida, a Spanish red bean stew. Pastakada, a Croatian stew from the region of Dalmatia. Peperonata, an Italian stew made with peppers. Pescado blanco, a white fish stew from Pátzcuaro, Michoacán, Mexico. Pickelsteiner, a traditional German stew. Pork ale, a Hungarian meat stew resembling goulash, flavored with paprika. Potjekos, a South African stew. Pot au feu, a simple French beef stew. Pozole, a Mexican stew soup.
Puchero, a Philippine, South American, and Spanish stew. Pulisu is a form of stew from Andhra Pradesh in India that is typically sour and cooked with tamarind paste. Ratatouille, a French vegetable stew. Ragout de porc, a stew with a picture in this article. Sambar, a thick vegetable stew, from South India. Sancocho, a stew from the Caribbean. Scouse, a stew commonly eaten by sailors throughout northern Europe, popular in seaports such as Liverpool. The stew, a stew from La Tour du Pin. Semur, a typical Indonesian stew with beef or chicken, potatoes, carrots, various spices and kecap manis from Indonesia. Sugulian, a watery stew of meat and vegetables. Stoufles, a Belgian beef stew with beer, mustard and laurel. Tagine, a Moroccan stew, named after the conical pot in which it is traditionally cooked and or served. Tharad, a traditional Arab stew of bread in broth. Waterzooi, a Belgian stew. Yani, a Greek, Turkish and Persian stew.